Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it. A Friday edition is here. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. No Chris Schmidt today, as once again, it's another Friday where he is out on the baseball diamond on some dad duties, watching the little guy get it done for Lincoln Southwest freshman Summer Legion team. So we wish them good luck. I saw on Twitter that it's going to be the little Schmidt on the mound tonight. So Schmitty expecting some Wild Thing action. I guess that game might actually be underway already, so I have to reach out to Chris and get a mid-game update. But in the meantime, we are joined here on a Friday, as we always are, but a special Friday, just as we had last Friday, because Bill Doleman joining us for the entirety of this Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. We couldn't be more excited for that. Bill, a lovely Friday here in Lincoln, Nebraska. It's starting to get a little bit overcast, but it was a beautiful sunny day earlier, warm, and can't ask for anything better than that. Is it the same for you out in Denverland? I know Chris is calling it Donkey Land, but
yeah, a couple of weeks ago we had nice snow. We've had rain, and we're supposed to have a nice day today. So it's been good for the yard and anybody who wants to get out and play baseball. The little guy's not so little anymore. I think Carson's bigger than his dad. And and you are given a base, but let's face it, he's suspended for another Friday.
Well, wait. You said he's bigger than. Are you talking this way, or are you talking the other way?
Tall. He's taller. Yeah. He's got a ways to go to meet him in the width, but you still have Schmitty on the intro and not me on a Friday. But I'm sure you can work on that in production.
Well, I've said this a few times on the show. The problem is our saved folder that had all like the raw versions of all these intros was deleted long before I was here. So like where we have them in like their entirety is all we have of these intros anymore. So I can't go in and like keep the same bed underneath it and go change the voice. I've tried my best. Maybe I need to try a little bit harder, and maybe I need an expert opinion on here like Bill Doleman to figure out how I should do this. But for the most part,
just go back in the Average Joe Sports Show archives and bring up the intro when I show up.
I don't think we even have the Average Joe's show archive anymore. It's a long time. I think we just cleared out everything pre-COVID, so everything pre-2020 is.
Yeah, well, we're going back to 2006, I think. So I would probably assume, the cloud I would assume it's gone, but
we were talking. Everything's in the cloud nowadays. We're talking before the show. Like everything's in the cloud. I'm sure it's saved somewhere, but. Excited to have Bill Doleman with us here on a Friday. We're also live streaming the show, ESPN Lincoln at Twitter, ESPN Lincoln Facebook. For the Twitter page, that is at ESPN Lincoln. And for the Facebook page, that is ESPN Lincoln 101.5/1480 AM. That's where you find us. That's where you find the live stream if you'd like to follow along there. You can also give us a call today at 402-466-3776. That is 402-466-ESPN or 800-825-5865. If you really miss Schmitty, you can send him an email, chris@hailvarsity.com. Don't bother sending me an email.
Yeah. Why would you?
Yeah, I guess maybe he's having. You can check in with him directly for a baseball score if that's why you're listening today. If you want to see how Carson's doing on the mound, but other than that,
or if you need to find the Jamesons.
That is true. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us, follow us on Twitter at Bill Doleman, for Bill at Herbal Essences, for me, Elijah Herbal. We already have a tweet in today from Dan. He says we're going to get a Friday Night Lights rundown from Bill. And Dan, we're getting there. We all know how much Bill Doleman loves the world of recruiting. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. That's why we had Greg Smith on yesterday, actually, Bill, is to keep you from ruining that interview completely by being down on recruiting. So
maybe Greg could set me straight, maybe Greg could get me to fall in love with
see the light.
I do follow Greg's work on Hail Varsity and follow along. It's just that I don't follow it near as closely, as passionately, and I'm not going to insult anybody, but by saying stupidly. So I'm not going to say that. But look, Nebraska plays the game, you know, and if you got to figure out a way to attract, well, I was going to say a 17-year-old kid. You got to figure out these days how to attract a 13-year-old to get on the radar for when they make their decision, their first decision in, 4 years' time. And then you got to stay on their radar for when they make their transfer decision in a year or 2 or 3 years' time. And
with some programs around the country, you got to stay recruiting them while they're in college. You got to stay in their ear and plant that seed of, we got playtime for you over here. And I don't want to throw any names out there, make any accusations. Don't want Jimbo Fisher doing some press conference about some poor post-grad radio host in Lincoln, Nebraska, saying that he's mucking about in the transfer portal. I'm not going to open up that can of worms, but you're 100% right. So with that in mind, if you want to follow recruiting, don't give Bill Doleman a follow on Twitter. You should give a follow to @GregSmithHV. He's your guy. Bill will just be throwing cold water all over your hype parade all day long. Yeah.
Well, seriously, you mentioned the Jimbo Fisher thing. They had the SEC. It wasn't really their SEC media days. They had, I guess, it was
the spring coaches meeting.
Yeah, I think it's in Destin, as it always is. Beautiful place, and it seems as though that after setting each other on fire, 2-3 weeks ago, that Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban have now poured cold water on each other. But I think more so Fisher than Saban. That whole thing was. I've always said for the last few months that Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney have an agenda in terms of why they have said the things that they have said about NIL. If you'd gone back 30, 20 some years, it would have been, Tom Osborne, Bobby Bowden, Barry probably figured out a way to erase the rules. Dare I say Joe Paterno, that they would have been the ones that would have been saying things that would have been seeds for topics of conversation around the politics of college football. And now it's Dabo Swinney and it's Nick Saban. And that was, back in February, somewhere in there where they were, tossing seeds out, like I said, or throwing grenades about NIL and the direction of college football. And then it was the Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban thing back in mid-May. And now at these meetings, it's like, I really wasn't talking about Jimbo and this, or this is really what I said. But then Fisher, who says, I know where all the bones are buried. I know all this and this and this and this. And he thinks he's God. And Fisher's all of a sudden like, I'm moving forward. We're just moving forward now. And he really backtracked and said nothing. And he's just moving on. And I'm thinking, there's a little movie that came out in the early 1970s called The Godfather. I don't know if anybody has heard of it. Maybe it's a hidden gem that I've uncovered. But there's the scene where is it Jerry Waltz? Is that the producer out in Hollywood, and the Vito Corleone is doing a favor for Johnny Fontaine, and the famous scene, if you've seen the movie, with the horse head in the bed.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden, Waltz gets Johnny Fontaine's career jump started, and so the way Jimbo Fisher has backtracked on, I'm not saying anything to anybody about anything that I accuse Nick Saban of doing, seems to me that Jimbo Fisher is playing the role of Jerry Waltz because somebody got to him somewhere and said, you better not say anything else.
Oh, that's from the SEC too. With you look at the seating chart and everything with the quick statement from the commissioner, like shortly after all that, where he said like, this is wrong. Oh, someone in the SEC said, you guys better make up and play nice. This is the SEC. We don't play that down here. I mean, just
nobody outside of Congress knows less apparently than the administrators and coaches in the Southeastern Conference right now. I mean, you put anybody in Congress in front of to testify, or Congress or a committee or a department secretary or whatever the case might be, whenever they got to testify, nobody knows anything. I don't recall, right? those meetings at the SEC were a whole bunch of, I don't know. I don't recall, haven't thought about that. We really don't have much information on that right now. And that's the way those SEC meetings went, outside of closed doors. Well, no matter who knows what was said in the halls of Congress, who knows what was said in the halls of the SEC at the hotels in Destin. But yeah, nobody knows less right now than the people in the SEC, because nobody was talking about much after the flare back in May.
I eagerly await the release of that 30 for 30 in 15 years about what was going on behind closed doors. You know what's coming.
Yeah. That'll be about the time they wrap up the Kansas basketball investigation in 2040.
Well, that's what they'll be advertising when this 30 for 30 comes out, into the Kansas basketball phenomenon. We knew that was coming up at least once with Bill Doleman on the show today.
Absolutely, yep.
We'll get more into some NIL thoughts a little bit later, because Ryan Day said Ohio State needed how much money to pay their players to keep them around. We'll get into that a little bit next hour. We'll also have Steve Marik coming up here in about 10 minutes, discussing some of the newcomers in this week's Hail Varsity mailbag. And coming up next hour, we'll lead off hour 2 with Jacob Padilla. Got some NBA Finals to talk with him, as well as a tournament high school that he was up in watching today. But the most important news we'll be talking about with Jacob Padilla is a new commit to Husker basketball. That is Chase Clemmons, the number 36 point guard in the country. That's according to 24/7 Sports. If you remember, from Legacy Early College in South Carolina, that is the home of the McGowan's brothers, as Chase Clemmons actually a cousin of the McGowans, and there's your Nebraska connection. There is Clemmons picking Nebraska over the likes of Georgetown, Georgia, Houston, and others. Also had interest from some top schools such as Auburn and others, as the quote from Clemmons in the Omaha World Herald is, my relationship with Hoiberg and the family environment is what the deciding factor was. It was an amazing vibe, and it made me feel at home. Also saying he's been talking to the McGowan's brothers every day since receiving his Nebraska offer back in October of 2020, and he must have liked what he saw on the floor from Fred Hoiberg and company, even though most of us Husker fans have not liked what we've seen on the floor. He sees reason for optimism, as Chase Clemmons is in a 6-foot point guard, number 36 player in the country, number 36 point guard in the country. And you look at that and it doesn't quite strike you as a Big Ten point guard, 6 foot, more of a score first type of guy. But Fred Hoiberg and company obviously seeing something dating back almost 2 full years here on Chase Clemmons. He is next into the boat. We'll get Jacob Padilla's take on Clemmons here next hour, and what Jacob Padilla sees in him, how he sees Clemmons fitting into this Fred Hoiberg system at Nebraska. Jacob Padilla is the man to talk to there, so we're going to be getting caught up with him here in a little under an hour, as that's Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery. But Bill, before we get out of here this segment and before we get to Steve Marik, a few more thoughts here on recruiting. I want to get your take specifically on in-state recruiting. This was our big topic on the show yesterday with the 500-mile radius and the way that Nebraska has to recruit these guys differently than they ever have before, and whether that comes down to the social media age, the recent success of Nebraska, just how this staff has tried to connect with in-state guys. There's a multitude of factors that you could point to here, but at the end of the day, the simple matter of fact is Nebraska has to go harder in the recruitment of in-state guys than they did, say, 20 years ago.
Well, yeah, it's a different era. There's no question about it. You know, back in the day, when you had, I'm going to say the top 25 programs, and the top 25 programs had their pick of the best players around the country. And now you've got, everybody has exposure. Everybody's on TV. People want to play close to home, so mom and dad and grandma and grandpa don't have to travel so far. But, people are uncovering how talented the athletes are in the state of Nebraska. You've got more, like the Warren Academy up in Omaha, where Steve Warren is helping to develop, talent earlier and earlier. And there are others like that around Nebraska, I'm sure, but that's just the one that comes to mind. So, it just stands to reason that more schools are kicking over more rocks, and they're kicking over the rocks in Nebraska and seeing the potential and the talent and the work ethic, the culture, the character of a Nebraska kid. Be it a big city like Omaha or a small town out west, or Fremont Bergen High, whatever the case might be. But it's the schools are doing their due diligence and finding talent and trying to entice them to wherever, the kid might think it's a little sexier at the time, for the time being. I've said this many times in the past. Back, when I was growing up and when I was at Nebraska, you could go, okay, Sean Ridley, Larry Station, two guys that went to Iowa. Danny Goodwin went to Iowa State. You could really just count on, one hand the number of athletes that left Nebraska. And now there's more and more just because there are more schools. We're finding that there's talent here. But I on the other side of it, people always say, well, you can't win in Nebraska because you just can't find players to recruit. And it's just too hard. Well, apparently all these other schools are coming into Nebraska because they think there's talent there to be had, and there is. So which is it? There's no talent here, or there's so much talent that Nebraska can't take it all, and other schools are poaching it. It's just part of the recruiting game. Why are kids from Georgia coming to Nebraska? Why are kids from Florida? Why are kids from other? It's a big time program, and right now you're in an era where high school kids in Nebraska think it's kind of sexy to say I'm getting recruited by Oklahoma or Louisville or Miami or wherever, or Gonzaga in basketball, so I'm going to go there. Okay, you want to go there, that's fine. That's just the way it is. It's too bad. You're going to miss out when things get really good. But there are going to be those kids like Garrett Nelson, who I have said from day one of the Scott Frost era, or whenever they signed the kid, the most important recruit in the Scott Frost era is Garrett Nelson, not Adrian Martinez. Adrian was nice. Garrett Nelson. I've said it from the beginning, and I still mean it to this day. He is the bedrock that when this program turns around, and instead of going 3-9, goes to 9-3, that's the kid that this program, this young man, is built on. He's a Nebraska guy. He's going to entice more Nebraska kids to stay. It's going to be the cycle where they start staying, and this is the place to be.
There is Bill Doleman joining us here for a full Friday edition as we'll get caught up with Steve Marik here after the break. You're listening to Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Hello, listener. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price of $29.99. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And we're back.
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio listen?
On Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome! Rolling through a Friday here on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. It's Elijah Herbel and Bill Doleman filling in today for Chris Schmidt, who is out on the baseball diamond watching the little guy pound the strike zone, hopefully, as we'll get an update from Chris on how the games went tomorrow morning. I am sure the Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio for our local listeners here on ESPN Lincoln, 7 to 9 a.m. and available in podcast form shortly thereafter, as Bill Doleman and I talking Bill's favorite subject today, recruiting, as well as some other thoughts. We'll get into the NBA Finals here in just a little bit, as well as how much Ryan Day is or how much he is suggesting he needs to pay his players at Ohio State to keep them around. But before we get to all that, we welcome into the show Steve Marik from Hail Varsity Radio. As Steve, big recruiting weekend, as we were just mentioning here this weekend, Friday Night Lights. And I'll just say, as a 2016 attendee of Friday Night Lights, I think the Huskers missed out on a big in-state recruit here in Elijah Herbel. So I'm going to pose the question to you, talking recruiting, talking a little bit of in-state recruiting. Do you feel like the Huskers missed out on one Steve Marik back in the day?
No, they did not. Absolutely, they did not. I don't think they were interested in a 6'3" string bean at defensive end playing 8-man football. So no, I do not think that they missed out on one Steve Marik.
Hey, that's 6'3". That's a good frame to build. They could have just maybe not seen the vision. Maybe that's it.
Or the athletic talent. Either one. Either one. But so thanks for having me on, guys. But I think my days are well past me, and I am much rather write about these athletes than try to do it myself.
Well, I mean, was football the only sport for you? Were you a multi-sport guy?
No. So I grew up in a really small town, so you got to play all the sports if you really wanted. So I played football, basketball, and then I was a high jumper on the track team.
Well, Steve Marik's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Steve, I want to dive in to the story that you just put up today as you're going through the list of newcomers that Nebraska football has added this year, primarily in the transfer portal, and you've reached numbers 6 through 4 on your list, which means, I believe, if my math is correct, this is the penultimate list of your newcomers, and the 3 you got listed today: Anthony Grant coming in at number 6, Trey Palmer coming in at number 5, and then you have Devin Drew coming in at number 4. Now, I just want you to take us through your criteria here, how you're rating these guys, and what's going into your evaluation process as you're listing the most important newcomers for Husker football here in 2022.
So when I first started out about just kind of thinking about and writing this thing and ranking these newcomers, I just wanted to kind of look at them as a whole and not really worry about, stats or production from their previous spots, but just kind of how they instead fit in with Nebraska's current roster right now. And so stats didn't really come into play too much with it. But, when I look at a guy like Anthony Grant, he's, everybody's going to look at the junior college production, and it was great. It was really great coming from New Mexico Military Institute and before that Florida State. He's going to be in a competition right now with the running back room, along with Jacob Padilla and Ramir Johnson, and I'm just kind of curious about how Anthony kind of fits in there, because he's really, really intriguing. I love the 5'11", 200-pound frame that he's working with. He's shown a burst. He's shown he can break tackles. He's got the side-to-side shiftiness that you always look for in running backs, and I'm kind of curious about what Brian Applewhite, their running back coach, what kind of rotation he tries to throw out there. Is he going to want a running back who's going to get 10 to 15 carries a game, or is he going to try to spread the ball out to those 2 other guys who showed really good things last year with Ramir Johnson and Jacob Padilla? And with Yant is his off the field issues past him? Has his maturity kind of showed up and allowed him to be the best running back that he can be? I guess we're going to find out. By all accounts, it seems like that has happened. He's cut down on the diet, the bad food that he's said he was eating a lot last year. So Anthony Grant is a really interesting one, and I think he's going to get a heck of a shot, and he's going to get a great opportunity to be a member of that running back rotation. And then, Trey Palmer, how can you not like Trey Palmer's confidence, right? I mean, I don't know if you guys remember his press conference the first time he showed up in front of the press this past spring. He was very, very confident. And, just looking at his production at LSU and kind of watching his games where he had some action, he's got that speed. He's got the burst. He's got the playmaking ability. And I just think, if he's coming in here, especially with Mark Whipple as his offensive coordinator, who has a history of kind of picking out and identifying his most dangerous athlete on the offense and then feeding that athlete the ball, I think Trey Palmer is absolutely an option to be that guy. And I just think that he's a really, really good athlete who can do some things as a specialist in the return game too. So I think Trey Palmer is absolutely a top 5 newcomer to the team. And then, just Devin Drew. When I was thinking about Devin Drew, I think about just the need of the interior defensive line. They needed more bodies there, experienced bodies, and Devin Drew absolutely provides both of those things. With spending the past 2 seasons at Texas Tech, he played a lot of snaps for the Red Raiders, and he played a really tough position, defensive end in that front defense that the Red Raiders play over there. I don't think he was really meant. I don't think his job was to kind of sack the quarterback and get after there. Instead of just kind of take on double teams, eat up space and a lot of the guys behind him to make plays. And I think that's exactly, the kind of thing and the kind of teamwork that Nebraska probably liked about Devin Drew. And before that, obviously, he was a Iowa Western Community College guy. It doesn't really hurt to get those former Reavers into the program at Nebraska, and maybe that will hopefully start a pipeline there, you think, because they have a lot of great talent over there. Iowa Western, Perrion Winfrey was another Oklahoma Sooners defensive lineman who got drafted pretty highly, and he was a Iowa Western player before going to Oklahoma and tearing it up. So, it was just really, really fun to do those things, and I think, Anthony Grant is going to be a really, really good part of this running back rotation, and Trey Palmer as well as the receiving crew as well as special teams, and then Devin Drew just playing a really, really important position with the interior defensive line. He brings a veteran kind of leadership, tough-nosed player. He's played a lot of snaps. He's durable, and I just think that those three guys are really going to possibly make an impact this year.
Steve, I'm stunned at the amount of roster interest that there is after spring football. And when I look at all the transfers and everything that's gone on, I still think that the unit that has improved most because of the transfers or has gotten the better of it is Nebraska's linebacking core, because of Drew and because of Wynn. And coming out of spring ball, that linebacking core looked like it was going to get beat up because Nebraska had nothing along the defensive front, and then they get the two transfers coming in. Then you've got Mathis as well. And all of a sudden, the linebacking core is not going to get beat up and take all the punches that it looked like it was going to be taking, along with some of the other guys that were on the defensive line. So it's just remarkable. I cannot think of another team. Granted, the transfer portal is still relatively new, but I cannot think of a team ever in covering sports for as long as I have that has gotten better in such a dead period as Nebraska has gotten after spring football.
Well, Bill, I think you're absolutely right. That's a great point by you, and one that I failed to mention when I was talking about Devin Drew is, the benefactors of those two additions was Stephon Wynn Jr. and Devin Drew, and even like you said with O'Shawn Mathis and Ty Robinson and then Garrett Nelson. I know those aren't transfer portal additions, but still with those guys coming back in that defensive line, that's got to be music to Luke Reimer and Nick Hendricks' ears, because if you get defensive linemen who are good at their jobs at taking up blocks, commanding double teams from offensive linemen, all that does is help out Luke and Nick behind them to do what they do best. And we saw what they can do when they have a good defensive lineman in front of them last year, which is see ball, hit ball, right? I mean, that just creates, if you have a good defensive line in front of you and your linebackers, you're going to have alleys, open grass to go make plays. And I think that, the work that Nebraska has done, like you mentioned, Bill, with those transfer additions, those veteran transfer additions, I just think it really helps out those two linebackers to have yet another really good solid season and rack up the tackles. They almost had together almost 200 last year. So tackles. So I think you're completely right. No, a lot of teams have done work in the transfer portal, but Nebraska, especially at their D line with what they've got coming in with Stephon Wynn Jr. and Devin Drew, absolutely. It's going to help out Luke Reimer and Nick Hendricks.
Steve Marks with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Steve, last thought before we let you go. I'm pretty sure you're a Cubbies guy, are you not?
Yeah, unfortunately right now, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, looking at Chicago baseball, the White Sox look pretty bad right now, and the Cubs don't look much better. So it's just punch after punch for you with covering the Husker baseball team in a down year, and now you get into the Cubs and the White Sox. Like, how tired of baseball are you as we're just entering the month of June?
Well, here's the thing. I came into my Cubs fandom during like the Starlin Castro years, when I was like a young high schooler. Mm-hmm. So I have endured some really bad Chicago Cubs seasons. So this is nothing new for me right now. It's almost like I had my World Series, right? So I'm almost like, hey, anything else on top of that, if you can just have a little bit more success after that, like I'm fine. Like I already got my World Series under my belt for the fandom side of things. So it's nothing new. We got a nice little three game win streak going on here, and it's always good to beat the Cardinals. Just an awful organization the St. Louis Cardinals are. So yeah, it's just any little success that comes up, I'm happy with. But all the losing, it's nothing new. I've been here for a while, and Stellan Castro used to be my favorite kid growing up. So I've endured plenty of losses with the Chicago Cubs. But at the end of the day, it's I'm not just going to quit liking them because they're losing. That's not what a good fan does. So
well,
go
Steve,
Cubbies. Before
you know it, 100 years will pass, and you guys will win another one. So. That's all that matters.
Hey, and whenever that happens, I'll be glad if I'm in the ground or not. So I'm good with it.
Steve, appreciate the time today. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Elijah.
Calling all soccer fans. Union Omaha is back home after an unbelievable showing in the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup round of 16. An upset over Minnesota United? That's our team. So join them when they come home May 28th for Educational Outreach Night, presented by Bellevue University. The Owls will face Northern Colorado Hailstorm FC, and after a couple of road matches, will come back on June 18th to face Greenville Triumph SC. It's also Pride Night. We'll see you there.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
It's Elijah Herbel and Bill Doleman in today on a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery. No shortage of topics to talk about here on a Friday as Nebraska has secured a commitment from Chase Clemmons, point guard from down in South Carolina, number 36 point guard in the country. Also a cousins of the McGowan's brothers, and saying that played a big role in his commitment, especially the development staff and what he saw Bryce McGowan's do in 1 year at Nebraska. And we've talked about it a few times on this show. Usually you expect a guy like Bryce McGowan's, a true freshman, to come in and make some strides during a freshman year and hit a wall. And you never saw that from Bryce, so he is off to the NBA draft, looking to be a first-round pick. And with a good pre-draft process, maybe work his way up around the lottery. Also, Trey McGowan's headed off to the draft. So no family members on the team for Chase Clemmons, but he will be here on the team come the 2023-2024 season as he enters his senior season. We'll get Jacob Padilla's thoughts on that coming up here to lead off hour 2 in about 15 minutes, maybe 20. So excited to hear from Jacob Padilla. We just heard from Steve Marik as he is counting down the Huskers' most impactful transfers for 2022, and we'll get to some NBA Finals here in just a second. But Bill, not just a big news day in the world of sports. You also got a new Post Malone album, which I know just looking at you right now, I know you're a big Post Malone fan. You got that. I personally have been trying to catch up with Stranger Things, as I was up way too late last night after the finals in the NHL playoffs watching Stranger Things. And it's one of those things where you check the clock and I go, oh my God, it's 1 a.m. What am I doing? So I've been trying to catch up on Stranger Things. You got Obi-Wan, the new show. Just really, I mean, for a time of year, early June, where we in the college football media especially kind of scratch your head and go, well, what are we going to talk about until August? I mean, no shortage of things to talk about today.
Well, again, thank you for Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban giving us something to talk about post-spring ball. And now with the transfer portal and the Friday Night Lights and all these transfer stuff and recruiting, it really never does stop. So there is that. But, I was interested in listening to Steve, and I don't know if I missed something. I don't think I did. Whatever happened to Gabe Ervin? I know he had a knee injury, but that should be, did he leave? Is he still around? Nobody's talking about the guy who was the starting tailback in Nebraska, running back at Nebraska, I-back at Nebraska last year as a freshman, right? Mm-hmm. Still around, right?
Well, I think the question becomes, was Gabe Ervin the starter because of his talent, or was he starter because of a lack of talent in the running back room? Because Ramir Johnson was a guy who was buried on the depth chart to start the year, and he worked his way up as the year went on. So I think there's a question out there of, when you watch Gabe Ervin, I mean, now coming off a knee injury, really didn't get to get into his freshman year all that much. You wonder what kind of strides can be made in year 2 whenever you've already seen the strides that Ramir Johnson made last year, and you saw a guy in Anthony Grant that really popped during the spring, and especially during the spring game.
But I'm just saying, we get all excited about all this recruiting news, and 2 years ago it was, we got this great running back out of Georgia, and he comes in and he's the starter as a true freshman. Okay, how good was Nebraska's room? I don't know, but we were all excited about Sevion Morrison, right? I mean, we got this great running back out of Oklahoma that Spencer Tillman says is the best that he's ever seen in the state of Oklahoma. Now he's at Kansas. And Gabe Ervin starts at Nebraska, has a knee injury. Hate to see that happen. And as an old school Nebraska guy, Gabe Ervin, number 22, reminded me of an old number 22, Doug DuBose. And I thought, this guy's going to really grow into his role. I thought he was really good, but he got hurt. So that opens the door for Ramir Johnson. We thought Jacques Yant was going to be the guy, but he had some diet undisciplined problems with his diet and maybe some other things. I don't know all of that, but he was not in great shape. But we're all excited about Yant. We were all excited about him in the spring game a year ago because he looked like Fred Flintstone running through Princetone Rock in that cartoon back in the 1960s, just this man among, junior hires. But Gabe Ervin might still be pretty good, but nobody's talking about him. We're excited about the new shiny toy. And yes, Anthony Grant might be great, and he might be the guy. He might be a 30 carries per game guy, but so could Yant. So could Ramir Johnson. And again, we've just kind of forgotten that Gabe Ervin was the starting running back last year before he got hurt. Well, so we get excited about the shiny toys that we get to play with, and we forget about the old reliable G.I. Joe over here.
Well, there's Bill Doleman with his patented cold water on the recruiting and the transfer portal. He's known for it. You love him for it. Bill coming with the heat here on a Friday. As I personally really like what I saw. I personally just think there's going to be more competition in the running back room. I like what I saw from Anthony Grant. Liked what I saw from Ramir Johnson last year. If Jacques Yant can make the strides that we'd expect him to make with that frame, I think he's very talented. And I'm not forgetting about Gabe Ervin here. It's just with a significant knee injury like that, it's back burner.
Nobody talks about him anymore. That's 2 years ago when we talked about recruiting, I asked you before the show, who was Nebraska's main target in 2021? Was that Omar Manning? It might have been. I don't remember.
That was the year before. Okay,
we get all excited about whoever signs in December or February, and then we forget about them because we're so excited. We're so interested in who's going to sign and be a player that might contribute 2 years away from the class that we just signed. And then we forget about who we just signed. And that, to me, that's the problem with the recruiting these days. We get so enamored with now who's in the class of 2024. People have forgotten about Will Watson already. We're so excited about Will Watson, committing to Nebraska and Mark Whipple, that Mark Whipple's got his guy. Then the Gretna kid, all of a sudden gets some headlines. It's like, we got to get that guy. Well, we got to get Dylan Raiola. Well, we don't have the money to get Dylan Raiola. Be happy with who signs, hope they develop, and hope they become contributors. I love Omar Manning. Not so much because has he put up the numbers that everybody thought he was going to put up? Probably not. But I love Omar Manning for how he has developed as a human being representing the University of Nebraska and talking about the difference that the University of Nebraska and the people of Nebraska have made in his life and how he now wants to contribute. Now, is that Pollyanna? Yes. But I look at Omar Manning as a young man now going, man, I'm glad he's a Husker. I don't care if he has 10 catches in a game or 10 catches in the season. But that guy right now is a great representative of what the University of Nebraska athletic department can do for you to grow you into a mature, responsible human being. At least that's what the impression I get from him now. And so that's why I'm really glad that he's a Husker the way he represents Nebraska. I hope he has a great season. I hope he catches 10 balls a game. I hope Gabe Ervin averages 150 yards a game. I hope Anthony Grant averages 150 yards a game. I hope Ramir Johnson averages 150 yards a game, and that we average 450 yards per game on the ground. That's what I hope next year.
How many points would that equate to, you think? That 90? Is that scored by 90?
Like we did back in the 90s. 55 points a game. When we had 9 guys on the offense in 1997 who were Nebraska guys who ran the ball down the throat of every team we played and kicked one, and beat Tennessee by running the ball 21 times out of 22 plays in the third quarter, kicked their ass and took the national championship, and stuck Michigan with that wooden piece of AP crap.
good memories there. We'll wrap up hour one after this.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Wrapping up hour one here on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Elijah Herbel sitting in virtually alongside Bill Doleman. Bill checking in from the beautiful city of Denver, Colorado, as last night the Colorado Avalanche protecting the home ice, getting a win over the Edmonton Oilers. We'll get into that here in just a second. We also have Connor Clark sitting here in front of me, waiting in the wings. You hear him on Saltdogs broadcast. You hear him here on Hail Varsity Radio. You really hear him everywhere, as Connor Clark is here a little early, going to be producing the Saltdogs baseball tonight. He's also going to be joining us here in hour two, as well as we need to get the Saltdogs baseball report from Connor Clark, as we're now, I have to look at him here and say 16 games into the season. That sounds about right. So Saltdogs a little over, I guess that's easy. It was 100 games. They're 16% of the way through the season. So the Saltdogs, yeah, Bill, you don't have to. That was bad math. That was a journalism.
No, I think it was good math.
Major.
I mean, if there's 16 games in and a 100-game season, 16%, that's good math.
Took me way too long to get there, though. As that's why I really did not get anywhere past. Let's see. Would that have been pre-calculus in high school? As soon as I didn't have to take math classes anymore, I stopped all that. I wasn't bad at it. I just didn't like it. So that was your example of my math skills for the show today. Appreciate that. I'm sure that'll be coming back to bite me here eventually. But before we get out here this hour, a fun night of playoff action last night, both in the NBA and in the NHL. At least fun for me in the NHLs. The Avs getting a commanding 4-0 win over the Edmonton Oilers. They go up 2-0. And Bill, it's strange. I don't think at least a lot of people my age and people around here understand that in Denver especially, it's not the basketball team like it is in most cities that runs the news. It's the hockey team. It's the Colorado Avalanche are Denver's team during the wintertime, and people will follow the Nuggets if they're good, but they'd much rather the Avalanche be good. Oh,
without question. But then the Avs take a back page if the Broncos do anything, or if Russell Wilson buys another $25 million house in Cherry Creek, But yeah, this is not a Nuggets town. This is not a University of Colorado town.
Definitely not.
This is not. This is nothing but a Broncos town and the Avs in the winter. But a couple years ago when the Avs were pretty bad, people really didn't even notice how bad they were. But they've had a TV dispute out here for the last 3 years with Comcast Cable Xfinity. Doesn't carry, Altitude Sports Network. So people are so transitional, moving from transient from other cities that even to that extent, it's not enough to get their local television network on the major cable company. But if it was a Broncos channel, yeah, you're right. The Avs are big, and Nathan McKinnon and all those guys that have been around for a while, Joe Sakic, they've endeared themselves to the community, and they're off to a 2-0 start, and then it looks like they're going to head to the Stanley Cup final. I'm not sure that they have the team that can beat the best in the East, but they certainly are fast and fun to watch.
Maybe we knock on wood there, crossing my fingers the Avs are going to do it, as the big winner from the TV dispute's been Stream East. If you know, you know. If you don't, you don't. But Stream East has been the big winner there. Also, big winner last night, the Boston Celtics coming back from down 10-plus points going into the fourth quarter. They get a huge win in Game 1. And if you're keeping track, that's 3 straight steak and a beer victories for Elijah over one Chris Schmidt. So I have to make him pay up here soon, as I got it last night. Picked the Celtics. I'm happy with that. We'll get caught up with Jacob Padilla here after the break. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Calling all Storm Chasers fans. May 31st through June 5th, the Indianapolis Indians are in town for the first time this year at Werner Park. As an Omaha newbie, I attended my first Storm Chasers game earlier this season. And man, I'm telling you, they know how to do it right. The perfect family atmosphere with high-quality baseball. I mean, you're watching future pros here in Omaha. What an awesome experience. And that's what it's all about. Join the Storm Chasers June 4th for Runza Night. Runza will be sold inside the stadium. Plus, you'll get to see your favorite players wearing some specialty uniforms. If that's not enough to sell you, you can even snag yourself one of these jerseys, signed, I might add, after the game when they're auctioned off. It's all for a good cause benefiting the food bank for the Heartland. We'll see you there.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back into Hour 2, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, as it's Elijah Herbel and Bill Doleman taking you through, filling in for Schmidt, and a special guest here this hour, Hail Varsity's own Connor Clark, with us for the Hour 2, as well as he's been doing work for the Saltdogs this summer. We're going to get a Saltdogs report from Connor coming up here a little bit later this hour. But before we get to all of that, we got to talk some Husker basketball. I shouldn't say got to. We get to talk some Husker basketball, as some great news today. Chase Clemmons out of Legacy Early College in South Carolina committing to the Huskers. We'll get into Chase here in just a second with Jacob, but Jacob, first, I need to get your reaction to last night's NBA Finals Game 1. I thought the Celtics were down and out. I was over at Sportscasters. That's a free shout-out. They don't pay me in any way. I was just there, the neighborhood spot. At the end of the third quarter, I go, well, I'm not sure. After that run by the Warriors, I think this one might be over. And I head home and I turn on the TV, and it's a tie game. I go, what the hell is going on? So, Jacob, I need to get your report just to fill me in. What happened last night to the Warriors? How did the Celtics get that done?
Well, I think the Celtics hit like every three they took, but two in the fourth quarter, something like that, like 7 of 9 or 9 of 11 or something like that in the fourth quarter. So that's certainly one way to get it done, to pull off a comeback, is just to rain fire from three. And they certainly did that. And they also picked it up on defense. It was like 40-13 or something, the fourth quarter was. So it was really impressive from Boston, because usually Golden State, they're pretty good about burying teams in the third quarter and making sure they've got that thing wrapped up by the time you get to the fourth. And Boston, they kind of weathered the storm. They weathered it early on when Steph Curry was raining fire, and they were able to score enough to keep up. And then in the fourth quarter, they took over and locked down the Warriors. And I think there's some outlier things on both sides in that game. We'll have to see how both teams react. I don't think you're going to get combined 47 points from Derek White and Al Horford for the Celtics in every single game. But I think Jason Tatum also isn't going to shoot 3 for 17 or whatever he was in every game. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what adjustments are made in Game 2, what the Warriors learn from that game and their inability to close that one out. But I think this series has a chance to be pretty special, and it's one that we deserve after what we've seen from the playoffs so far.
Well, Jacob, you being a Suns fan, me being a Nuggets fan, we got to see plenty of those third-quarter runs from the Warriors this postseason. As soon as I saw that, I thought this thing was done. And Celtics showed a lot of moxie, showed a lot of heart. They stiffened up on defense, as you said, and they found a way to get it done. But my only question is, moving forward, is that going to be a game plan for the Celtics, or do they just catch lightning in a bottle for a quarter? And I guess that's what we're going to have to determine here as we progress through the NBA Finals. But I'm with you. I mean, after watching Game 1, I think this is, 6 or 7 games minimum, in my opinion. Both these teams look like they could win the championship this year. And after Game 1, I don't have any further of an inkling of who's going to win it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was a pretty big deal for Boston to pull that one off, because the Golden State, under Steve Kerr, they've been phenomenal in game ones of series, and obviously it's in Golden State. So now right off the bat, you kind of got that belief. You put that bit of doubt in Golden State's mind, and now you got to come back in Game 2, and the Warriors' pressure's on them to really come out and fix whatever allowed Boston to steal one in Game 1, because the Celtics have been very, very good on the road in the postseason thus far.
Jacob Padilla is with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Jacob, let's move into the Husker news of the day, as Chase Clemmons announced his commitment to the Nebraska basketball team earlier today, choosing Nebraska over the likes of Georgia, Houston, Georgetown, a number of offers for Chase Clemmons. But the Huskers got in early October of 2020. They made an offer, and the family connection helped too with his relationship with the McGowans brothers, them being cousins. I just want to get your instant reaction, as this is news came down, I think 4 or 5 hours ago now. Your instant reaction and how Chase Clemmons could fit into this Husker basketball team whenever he does finally make it to campus.
Yeah, he's, like you said, first 2023 commit, point guard who is very close with the McGowans. He's from South Carolina, and he kind of followed in Bryce's footsteps and transferred to Legacy Early College this year for his junior year. And kind of a three-star player. He's kind of viewed differently depending on the service you look at, but it's a good piece to get started. Anytime you can land a point guard, and that's a position that they've really struggled with. They've done some of the transfers. They've done kind of unorthodox like styles of point guards. He is kind of more of a traditional, smaller, only 6 foot, listed at 165 pounds. So not a lot of size to him, but he's quick. He can shoot the ball. He can pass the ball. So much more of the kind of traditional style of point guard than we've seen Fred Hoiberg recruit and land to this point. So it's something they've needed. They needed a guy that they can bring in and develop and be a long-term piece in that backcourt. And I think that's what they're hoping that Clemmons can be. Like you said, the connections with the McGowans brothers played a big part in this recruitment, and it's why it really is important, like, for your program to for players to peer recruit and give these players a good experience so that they do go tell their friends, tell their relatives, tell guys they're tight with that you could be recruiting down the line. Hey, I had a good experience here. You're going to like this if you check it out. And that seems to be the case here. Like you said, they recruited him for a long time. He visited back in October. And now he's pulled the trigger and is kind of getting Nebraska's 2023 class started.
It's kind of surprising that to me that he made the decision that he made. I'm glad he decided to come to Nebraska, but Houston was in on him from, I believe, his freshman year of high school. He had a really good relationship with Kelvin Sampson for a long time. Houston is a program that is not just on the rise, but has arrived. And for him to decide to go to Nebraska with the McGowans brothers no longer going to be in the program, and it's my understanding that I don't think they're related by blood. I think they're related by proximity, and he calls them family.
Yeah.
The other thing about it, too, is he's originally from Atlanta. So you're getting that Southeastern recruit, I guess he's a big-name recruit from the Southeast region, but also from the Atlanta area. So prior to going to South Carolina, that's where he grew up. So that's another tie to a very important place. And for Fred Hoiberg to put some, recruiting seeds down, not just in South Carolina, but Atlanta, I think that's pretty significant. And the fact that he's 6 foot and 165, that's pretty lean, shall we say, for Big Ten basketball. But maybe that means he might be around a little while to grow in to becoming a player who can, be around for maybe at least 2 years in this transitory era of college sports that we're in right now. So he might be more than just a one and done like Bryce was. And Bryce has NBA talent. I'm not sure Bryce is going to be an NBA guy right away. He's probably going to get drafted, but he could have used another year to get bigger. And maybe this kid, if he can get up to, 6 foot 185 or something like that, that'll make him a pretty solid point guard in the Big Ten in maybe 2 years.
Yeah, and like I said, that's kind of, I think, what the idea here is. Fred's tried the kind of the quick fix, go get transfer. You tried the Delano Banton as kind of an unorthodox point guard, also a transfer. You got Alonzo Virgin here as a senior. Now you got Sam Griesel has kind of taken on that role this year as another 6'6", kind of bigger, but one year player. So Clemmons is a guy that you can get into the program, that you can develop, that you can work with over the course of a few years, and he can hopefully grow into a guy that can be a multi-year rotation impact player for you.
Jacob Padilla is with us on Hail Varsity Radio, and Jacob, we saw that Trey McGowans ends up leaving the program. He's going to go pro. Who do you expect to, I don't want to say replace him, but fill those shoes, especially defensively?
Yeah, I think that's kind of why they recruited Emmanuel Vanderbilt from SMU. He's just kind of more of a 3-and-D guy type of guy, as opposed to a little bit more of an on-ball guy like Trey is. But I think that's kind of, you went and saw them land that commitment kind of late on in the process after they kind of, I think they were targeting more Bryce-type replacements with guys like Baylor Shireman and Antonio Reeves. And when they weren't able to land those guys, they kind of shifted gears, and Bandamel is a guy that showed some interest, and they made a push for him and got the commitment. So now you're looking at got some seniors there to kind of bridge the gap with Griesel, with Bandamel, and then you'll have kind of some of the younger guys growing up. Ramel Lloyd Jr. is the top guy in this recruiting class. Coming as he's more of the kind of combo 6'6", can play multiple positions for you, and it's a guy that can come in and learn from a guy like Sam Griesel. I think Sam will be really good for a guy like Ramel to learn from, to be that kind of multi-positional guard that can make plays and also play off the ball. So that's kind of the mix that they've got coming in here. Vandemel's grad transfer along with Griesel as kind of that senior backcourt to allow the freshmen that they've got coming in and some of the other young guys to kind of learn and grow as the program moves forward. Jacob
Padilla is with us here. And Jacob, let's shift gears. Bill, do you have one? I was going to shift gears.
Just real quick, how many new guys are they going to have in that roster next year? I've got like 8 or 9 written down right now.
Yeah, well, so kind of the returning core is Derek Walker coming back. You've got Wilhelm Breidenbach, hopefully getting healthy, coming off the injury. And C.J. Wilcher was their 6th man last year, and he'll probably slide into a more featured role. And those are kind of the main guys. You've got Keisei Tominaga still hanging around the program that played a bit for him last year. And then you've got Oleg Koyanets and Karan McPherson, both redshirted last year. So that's kind of the group of returning players, and then they're filling in like everything 5 else with new guys. You got the Blaze Kita, JUCO, and then the 2 transfers, and then the rest are all freshmen. They got 3 guys, and one of their freshmen enrolled mid-year last year, Denham Dawson. So he's been on campus. He was there for the second half of the season and going through the strength and conditioning practices and all that. So he's already got a bit of a head start there.
It's just crazy. And I'm going to go back in time just real quick here. When Barry Collier was Nebraska's head basketball coach and Jim Woolridge was the head coach at Kansas State, those 2 guys, I believe, came at the same time. And what happened to both of them, both quality coaches, but they got screwed by an NCAA rule at the time. It was the 8-5 rule. You could sign no more than 8 guys in 2 years and no more than 5 in 1. So when Nebraska goes through all this transition from one coaching staff to another and had players leave, they could not give out more than 5 scholarships in 1 year and no more than 8 in 2. Can you imagine what it would be like in this era of college basketball for Fred Hoiberg or anybody not named Bill Self to go around that 8-5 rule? It was impossible for Barry Collier, but I just am amazed that when you've got like 9 new guys in 1 year, and that's just the norm, to think what it was like for them, both of those coaches back in that era, it was just a stupid rule by the NCAA back in the day.
Well, and we've seen kind of football go that way too, where they're getting rid of the 25 limit to kind of adjust to the new era with easier transferring.
Jacob, before we get you out of here, about 2 minutes left. This morning, you were up at the Millard North Hoop Fest, checking out some high school hoops action, and I know you're on the pulse there. And with only 2 minutes, I guess the question I'll pose to you is, with the dominance we've seen from Bellevue West and Millard North over the past couple of years, based on what you've been seeing so far this spring and summer, is there any reason to believe that is going to change moving forward? I mean, 3 straight state title games featuring Bellevue West and Millard North.
Yeah, I do think they're coming back to the pack a little bit. Some of the players they've had in the program the last few years, it's been special. I don't think that we're going to see them reach quite that same level, but they'll definitely be in the mix as well. I just think you look at the state coming up here, and I mean, Millard North, they beat Westside after getting kind of run off the floor by Scott. So it's just kind of up and down. I don't think you've got the kind of reliable upperclassmen. You don't have a Jason Green. Bellevue West, they have Josiah Dotzler back, But beyond him, it's a lot of young guys, a lot of new guys that haven't played a ton. Like they were good rotation players last year, and now they're stepping up, and they're going to have to be kind of their main guys outside of Dotzler. So I do think you'll hear those names plenty as we go through the season. But I don't know that it's going to be, it's these two clearly above the rest. I think it'll be kind of more even playing field in Class A this year.
Just while we're talking high school hoops, any names to monitor as we move through the summer and fall of guys that could be on Nebraska's radar in the high school hoop scene?
Yeah, probably not at this stage. It's still too early for the young guys, and the 2023 class isn't really shaping up to produce multiple high major players. I know Nebraska's looked at Josiah Dotzler. They've looked at Jake Brack for Omaha Scott, who played really well today. Skyhawks are going to be a monster in Class B again next year, but those are kind of some of the main guys in terms of that are looking to attract Division I offers. Dotzler has a few. Brack, nothing quite yet, but he's hoping a good summer will help propel him forward there. But yeah, at this point, I don't know that there's anybody. We'll see kind of that 2024-25 class as those classes kind of grow and develop. We'll see if any of them kind of match up physically to the Big Ten level, but probably not more short term.
There is basketball extraordinaire Jacob Padilla talking Husker hoops, talking high school hoops. He's got his finger on the pulse, as I said. Jacob, appreciate the time today. You have yourself a lovely weekend.
All right, same to you guys.
Hail Varsity Radio continues after the break.
Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Elijah Herbel joined by special guest Bill Doleman, our second Friday show where we get a full 2 hours of the pride of Fairbury. And time just flying by, already down to our final half hour here with Bill Doleman. We're going to appreciate every single minute of it. We don't get this very often, so this is a special, special time. Also joined by, I guess we already have Danny Burke is the pride of Chicago, so I'm not sure Connor can be the pride of Chicago, but do you have a more specific, like a suburb?
Pride of Northern Chicago suburbs? I don't know. Well, whatever you want to take, I guess. Whatever route you want to take.
Let's see. For the pride of UNL for right now.
Okay, that's fine.
Anyway, Connor Clark is with us here as... What was that, Bill?
What's a northern suburb of Chicago?
Lake Bluff. Specifically, that's mine, at least.
Wow.
The pride of Lake Bluff. That sounds too bougie. That sounds way too,
you wouldn't be
upper
totally
class
wrong.
Community. Well, Connor Clark joining us here for the second hour of Hail Varsity Radio today. We'll talk some Salt Dogs with him coming up in the 5:40 segment, so looking forward to that. The Salt Dogs off to a hot start, and they're looking to rebound this weekend after their first series loss of the season, but still sitting on at 11 and 6 on the season. So 17 games in, 17% of the way through the season. As we'll get to the Salt Dogs here in just a second. Before we get to that, though, this big recruiting weekend for Nebraska already paying some dividends. This is a guy that is not here in town this weekend, but you wonder if it's going to bring some momentum to the party, to this Friday Night Lights camp, as well as a big weekend of official visitors. As Nebraska with a new commitment coming courtesy of Jaden Doss, 3-star receiver from the Kansas City metro area. As this is already the combination of Bill Bush and Mickey Joseph, the two newest recruiters to the party. Their contributions paying off here as they were the two lead recruiters here for Jaden Doss. Jaden Doss standing 6 feet tall, 195 pounds, choosing Nebraska over the likes of Kansas State, Colorado, Illinois, Iowa State, and more. Recently received an offer from Oregon as well back in April, and an offer from Minnesota just a few months ago. So Nebraska doing some work in the Kansas City metro area. I believe that's still in that 500-mile radius. So all you no talent around Nebraska people, This is for you, Jaden Doss, 3-star receiver, coming to the party. I'm sure we'll get Greg Smith's take on this coming up here on a Monday, as Greg Smith going to be reacting to this big recruiting weekend. We'll get his take on Jaden Doss and what Jaden Doss can do in this offense. But just based on highlight films, measurables, and all that, it really seems like he fits that mold of Trey Palmer and Alante Brown, that slot guy who's going to be an athlete where you're just trying to get the ball into his hands and have him do some crossing routes. That it's a position that you heard a lot about when Scott Frost was coming to Nebraska, and recently less so, but that quote-unquote Duck R position. Unsure if it's going to be utilized in the Mark Whipple offense. We heard so much about it at Oregon and UCF, and then coming in here, Wandale is going to be the Duck R position. Well, recently been hearing less about it, but if there's any role that you'd think Jaden Doss is going to fit into at Nebraska, it's going to be that Duck R position. So we're going to not get Bill Doleman's take on this, because I'm sure he's going to splash cold water on it and talk about the receivers that are currently in the room.
What's a Duck R? Is it the wingback? Is that a slot receiver? Let's just call it what it is, so we don't sound like we're being smarter than we really are. We're gonna get that guy at the Duck R position.
Well, that's why I said it's the position that's been known as the
receiver.
Duck R.
You got a guy who can play the wingback spot like Donnie Westbrook and Kenny Brown. I don't know. He's a receiver. I think if Mickey wants him, at this point, I think we all just trust if Mickey wants him and Mickey likes him, then go get what Mickey wants. That's kind of what recruiting seems to be right now. Get all of Mickey's guys, we'll get them the ball, and figure out, how we're going to get 450 yards on the ground. So that's what it seems to be right now. Bill Bush and Mickey are doing apparently great things, and that's awesome. Getting a guy to Kansas City reasonably close, you establish those recruiting ties in the area again. It's all a win, if you ask me. But what the hell is a Duck R? He's a receiver. He's a slot receiver. He's a wide out. He's a big receiver. He's a tight end. These positions are getting like why baseball is hard to watch these days. Baseball used to be average, home runs, RBI. And now, or wins, losses, strikeouts, ERA. And now it's the whip and the WAR and the spin rate and the trajectory and the exit velocity. And you're like, I don't understand these sports anymore. He's a receiver. He's 6 foot, sure hands, good speed. All right, go Big Red. Welcome to the club. Welcome to the family.
I like it.
It's a realist take.
I like it.
There's nothing wrong with that take you just heard from Bill Doleman. That's why we love having him on. That's Elijah Herbel, Bill Doleman, and Connor Clark.
Seriously though, what's the Duck R? Just because Scott Frost calls it a Duck R, okay. But 99.9% of the people who are football fans in this football savvy state of Nebraska, just tell them he's a slot receiver or he's a speedy guy that we can use in versatile ways. Great. But otherwise, people are starting to say things that they don't quite understand. Same thing in baseball, same thing in basketball with pace and point efficiency. It's like, who won the game? I don't know, but they had more pace. The guy's a better WAR guy. His exit velocity is great, but he's only got 3 home runs. I don't understand sports anymore. Just tell me. He's a receiver. Great. I know what that is. We're going to throw him the ball. He's going to catch it, and he's going to run a long way faster than the other guys. I'm good.
All right, there he is, Bill Doleman. Bill, as we're talking about the changing world of sports and college football, let's head out to Columbus, Ohio, where Ohio State coach Ryan Day spoke to, according to a report from Cleveland.com, about 100 members of the Columbus business community, and he put a number on how much they would have to generate every single year in order to keep the Ohio State players that they like around, and that number has been set at $13 million every single year is what Ryan Day is asking for the business leaders of Columbus to generate for these players, which would come out to $150,000 for each man on an 85-man roster. But more accurately, this is probably coming out to $400,000, $500,000 for the 25, 30 most important players on the team, which it's just... It's the professionalization of college football. That's what we talked about last week with that story with Lane Kiffin in Sports Illustrated, where it's the game is almost becoming unrecognizable, where Ryan Day knows you need $13 million every single year, or these guys are going to go to the transfer portal and find them someone that is going to pay them that money.
Okay. So he sets the mark at $13 million. He also said quarterbacks are 2, and offensive tackles and rush edge guys are 1 million, right? But everybody, I'm sitting there listening to Ryan Day say, you need to step up. I'm going, Coach, you make $9 million a year. How about you hire a couple of these guys to mow your yard? Why don't you have the Ryan Day landscaping business? So your wife, how about setting it up on the side? Your wife has the Ryan Day, or what her name is, Mrs. Day, and maybe you pay some of these guys out of your pocket. All right. Now, look, I know whoever was in this room, those are the big guys in Columbus, Ohio, who are all probably have $13 million in their wallet, right? But if I'm trying to be an Ohio State booster, and I'm thinking you're coming to me telling me I got to help pay these guys, I'm just trying to pay for gas to get to my sandwich shop, right? People aren't coming in quite as frequently as they were 4 years ago or 2 years ago. So let's ease up on what you're telling me. I got to help you pay a kid who may not be here a year, like the guy from Texas who was there a year, took his $1 million and goes back to Texas to make more money, where in a year he's probably going to have to go against the Manning kid who may sign with Texas. But I'm thinking, okay, you've said it now, and that's almost like Dabo Swinney and Nick Saban, and now Ryan Day is getting into this conversation that's going to set the conversation for the coming days, weeks, months, and years. This is what it's going to cost. That's a shot out to let's say Kyle Whittingham at Utah, or the guy who just took over at Washington State, or the guys down at Vanderbilt or Pittsburgh. You want to play with the big boys, all right? This is what it's going to cost us. Are you guys going to challenge us? So Kyle Whittingham's out there going, $13 million in Salt Lake City, Utah. I can't go to the church. BYU can afford it, but what do I do? To me, this was not just talking to those guys in the room, just like Nick Saban wasn't just talking to the guys at the Birmingham, Alabama fan club. This is a shout out to all of college football, but it's also, if I'm their basketball coach, if I'm their volleyball coach, wrestling coach, Olympics, all this Olympic sport coaches, I'm like, $13 million to keep your 85-man roster together. What about me? What about Olympic sports? What about men's college basketball? I mean, that we are really going into some really weird territory with fans and how much they're willing to pay, with NIL, with booster money, are they going to build buildings, continue to do that?
Well, it sounds
and how much control do these singular owner, these boosters have over the 1 or 2 players that they're NILing? I mean, that's a really shady relationship if you get right down to it. And I don't mean shady in the way that, they're paying them money to do whatever, but business owners have money on players.
Well, but from a donor's perspective, it's better to be paying the player who could be coming in and winning you a national championship than paying the buyout for a coach who's going to turn around and use that money to buy himself a beach house in Florida.
I agree with that. I don't disagree at all. But man, it is weird right now where that money is going to go and who's going to get it. And then they're talking about internships, educational opportunities. Why? If the guy's not going to be around more than a year or two, what incentive does he have to get good grades? And why do they have to? Who's to say what they have to do? Why can't they just put their name and likeness on a billboard and pay me $5 million or $2 million? Who's to say that they have to do work?
Pride of Fairbury, Bill Doleman with us here, along with Connor Clark and Elijah Herbel. A Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcast is part of what we do at Hail Varsity. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we produce. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Rolling through a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, and Bill Doleman filling in for Schmitty today as he's out on the baseball diamond awaiting a report on how the starting pitching performance went for the little guy. So we will get a report for you on that one as soon as we know, most likely on the Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio. Tomorrow morning, 7 to 9 here locally on ESPN Lincoln. And then for our listeners across the state, will be available to you in podcast form wherever you like to get your podcasts. Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Hail Varsity YouTube page. You can also find individual segments on the ESPN Lincoln website. That's espnlincoln.com. Before we get out of here this hour, we do have open phone lines for you for the next 15 minutes or so. 402-466-3776. That's 402-466-ESPN, 800-825-5865. If you'd rather get connected with us on Twitter, give us a find, give us a follow, send a tweet to us at Herbal Essences. That's for me, Elijah Herbel, at Bill Doleman for Bill Doleman, and then for Connor Clark at C_Clark_27. That's where you find us three on Twitter. It's a great way to get connected with us. Before we get to talking some Salt Dogs baseball, who's going to be on the air here in a little under 20 minutes. A quick reminder that nearly 70% of people in fatal crashes in Nebraska are not wearing a seatbelt. If used properly, a seatbelt can reduce the risk of fatal injury in a crash by up to 60%. Your best defense in any crash, buckle up. A message brought to you by the Nebraska Department of Transportation Highway Safety Office. And before we get out of here this hour, we have three people sitting here on this show. Bill Doleman, former voice of the Lincoln Saltdogs. Connor Clark, you hear him in the booth now for the Lincoln Saltdogs, along with Michael Dixon. And then myself, you hear me here in the studio as a studio host. All three of us with some connections to the Lincoln Saltdogs. We love our Lincoln Saltdogs. I particularly love Thirsty Thursdays at the ballpark, Tall Boy Tuesdays, Wiener Wednesdays, really all of them. Never a bad night to get to Haymarket Park and check out the Saltdogs. And we got a man in here sitting with us in Connor Clark, seen every single home game so far this year. He knows the roster in and out. And I want to get the report of the Salt Dogs so far this season. 11-6, great start to the season, but they've cooled off in a big way, just getting swept by the Kansas City Monarchs, their first series loss of the year, now looking to rebound. So just what's the report on the Lincoln Salt Dogs 17% of the way through the season?
Yeah, I mean, they did start very, very well. It was their best start since 2006. I was 4 years old when that happened, so just to kind of give you a little bit of a timetable there.
I was 7. I remember that season.
Yeah. 16-3 start in 2006, but an 11-3 start this year, as you just alluded
40.
to.
Well, no, I'll say what I remember from that season is I believe that was the season, was it 2006, 2007, where they went and won the American Association?
2009.
2009, okay. I was way off. And I know in 2009 I had friends in elementary school, and one that was even the honorary bat boy for the championship game. And they're always going out. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. They got to go sit in the dugout and be bat boys, and they had a lucky bat boy who traveled with them, was in my class in elementary school, and he headed off and was a part of the American Association championship game, and I guess that's where my love for the Salt Dogs began. So.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned the sort of cool-off so far. I mean, they went down to Kansas City. They played a really good Kansas City team who has just been red hot offensively, red hot. They went 5 games in a row scoring above 10 runs. They scored 9 in the series finale, so they've scored at least 9 runs in their last 6 games. And that was just a team that hits a ton of home runs. We saw not the greatest start out of Kyle Kinman, which is rare to see. He got roughed up pretty quickly. Same with Garrett Delano. He didn't have a great start either, but that's credit to the Kansas City offense that they have going this year. I mean, they hit 147 home runs a season ago in 100 games. So that's almost a home run and a half a game. So they're hitting a ton of them. So that's a really good Kansas City team. They're currently second in the West Division, which Lincoln is in third now. They're heading up to Winnipeg for a 3-game set this weekend, which will begin at 6:30. As Elijah mentioned, pregame show will start here in about 15 minutes or so. But they're playing a Winnipeg team. They swept them last weekend at home, which was the first sweep of the season. That was series win number 5 of the season as well. They took a couple of come-from-behind wins, some gutsy comebacks in the 8th inning and on, but they came away with a sweep there, and they look to do the same here this weekend.
And that's going to be good stuff. I don't believe I remember the Salt Dogs having a series in Canada since I started working for the Salt Dogs. I'm not sure what the history behind that is. And Bill, I don't even think whenever you were the voice of the Salt Dogs, was there even a team in Canada?
Oh, yeah, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg was still there?
Oh, yeah. That was our second road trip was up to Winnipeg, and that's, of course, when we got stuck at the border for 4 hours because a couple guys had indiscretions on their legal resumes. But no, Winnipeg was really, other than Toronto, was the best baseball franchise in Canada. They had great success there, and they have a great operation. They've got a nice ballpark in downtown Winnipeg, which smelled a lot like cigarette smoke, but nevertheless, it was a great place to go once you got there, and it had very much a big league feel. Winnipeg reminded me back when we were doing games in the early 2000s, the first years of doing games with the Omaha Royals back in the late 80s, early 90s when I was doing stuff with the AAA franchise. That's very much how they operate. And they've had great announcers there. Their announcer, Steve Schuster, was one of my interns with the Salt Dogs. He's been there a long time, and they had a great announcer, Paul Edmonds, when we first started doing Salt Dog games, who's the voice of the Winnipeg Jets. So they've had great tradition, great players there. And despite the fact it took 13 or 16 hours to get there the first time we went there, it was always a treat to go to Winnipeg because they just treated you so well.
Connor, I'll pose this question to you. As the season moves on here, I'm not talking in the next week or two, but as the season moves on, do you think there's any guys on this Salt Dogs roster that there might be fears that a big league ball club could come and swoop them up? I mean, we were just hearing the story a couple days ago from the Royals of a pitcher they had who was playing similarly unaffiliated baseball after being cut, and he's brought back up now making his major league debut just a few nights ago. And I mean, there's been guys from the American Association. Tyler Matzik helped the Braves win a World Series. He was locked down in the 8th inning just about every single World Series win they had. I mean, even going way back, Max Scherzer was in the American Association at one point. Are there any guys on this Salt Dogs roster now that you think maybe if they continue to have a season that they've started out with, that they could be scooped up before the end of the year?
Well, what I've been hearing, we may not see Buddy Bauman for too much longer on this roster. There's been a couple of scouts that are interested. I don't know what teams, but that's just what I've heard, especially after the 15 strikeout performance he had last weekend, which was a franchise record in a single game for strikeouts. So that's a name that sticks out. I mean, obviously you have the guys that are kind of studs on this roster no matter what.
I think of Altman. If he gets hot, has a year like he had last year, I don't see him staying in the American Association much longer.
I mean, Josh, he started very well. He's kind of cooled off in the last 3 or 4 games, but he still provides a lot offensively. Kyle Kinman is a name that I don't know if he'll end up getting picked up, but obviously he's one of the better starters in this rotation. But when it comes to getting picked up by, say, a minor league organization, those are the names that come to mind. But, I mean, you still have a ton of guys on this roster, too, who contribute in their own ways. You have Justin Bird, you have Wellington Dotel, you have Skylar Weber, all these guys. Jared DiSarcina, who bats in the 9-hole a lot. He's very good at turning that lineup over, also very good defensively. So just a very good roster top to bottom.
We got Salt Dogs baseball coming your way for our local listeners tonight following the conclusion of this show, which is wrapping up here in about 10 minutes. Got one segment left to go before we wrap it up, though. That's coming up after the break. It's Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcasts are just part of what we do at Hail Varsity. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor. I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you, for less than $20, can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One last time here on a Friday, it is Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Elijah Herbel, Connor Clark, and Bill Doleman, who is giving me you got something you want to add here, Bill?
Well, you're talking about the Saltdogs and guys going up to the big leagues. I think, and Connor, you can go back in time. I know that we beat Luke Hochaver in Fort Worth in, I think, 2006 maybe. Hochaver went on to play to pitch for the Kansas City Royals, and then I think we beat Max Scherzer in 2006 or 7.
Yes, you're correct. Because I
I'm
remember
not sure if that game was in Lincoln or I think both of those guys pitched for Fort Worth. The kind of guys that were, I think both are Scott Boras guys. Mm-hmm. And they didn't come to an agreement after the draft or whatever, which like the dude from Vanderbilt didn't come to terms
Kumar
with
Rocker
the
as well, yeah.
Right. So he's going to Indy ball this year. But Hochaver and I think Scherzer were both Boras guys. They couldn't come to an agreement, so they put them in Fort Worth because it's a metropolitan area, so they weren't in Sioux City. Love Sioux City. So they were in kind of a big market and got to work out and do all that. And Hochaver got beat by Lindsey Galeen down in Fort Worth on like a 140-degree day. Galeen looked exactly like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, about 6'2" and about 160 pounds, and we beat Hochaver. And I think Scherzer might have pitched in for Fort Worth, and it might have pitched in Lincoln, but I don't remember that. But I think we beat both those guys.
If I remember correctly, and Michael and I were talking about this the other day, because he was showing me, he has a picture of the old scorebook, but they did play. And Lincoln played against Max Scherzer, and they did beat him. I believe it was in Fort Worth, but it was, I may be wrong on this, but I think it was like a 6-5 final, and Scherzer went like 6 innings, gave up 2 runs, and like 3 hits.
Didn't take the loss.
No.
See, that'd be a much cooler story if you can sit back and tell your kids, yeah, when I was playing for the Lincoln Saltdogs back in 2006, we gave future Cy Young winner Max Scherzer a loss on the ledger.
Well, he still didn't come out on top.
Yeah, I think we won. But I know that Lindsey Galeen outpitched Luke Hochaver, who was like the number 1 pick of the Royals and was the Max Scherzer of that draft. And we beat him down in Fort Worth in a pitcher's duel. So sometimes you run across those big league prospects or big league guys who find themselves in independent ball, and you have a pretty good night against them. But that was pretty cool.
Yeah, Hochaver ended up spending, I believe, 8 years in Kansas City, and still some great players in the American Association. Years past, they're still playing in the majors now, and I feel like that's an aspect of American Association ball, unaffiliated ball, that a lot of people around here don't know about. Is, the quality of baseball that's on display from the Lincoln Saltdogs every single night is on par with what you'd get from a Double-A team, and some of these good teams could probably get some Triple-A teams running for their money as well. A lot of good teams, the American Association with quality baseball players.
But Connor, you see this night in and night out now. It depends on pitching. You can get a really good, 1 or 2 starters on a American Association staff, and you've got a Double-A caliber game. But then you can get the 3 of us on a staff, and you've got, something that looks like independent ball, what people think it is.
I think that would look like AAA, right?
No, we'd look like the Houston Apollos of last season.
Come on.
Yeah, right.
Give some credit.
But it does. Bobby Madrich pitched for Winnipeg those first couple of years of the Saltdogs, and he went on to pitch in the major leagues for a little while, and he was just different, a different guy too, but his fastballs just sounded different, and he was good. He was why I think they won the league those first couple of years of the Saltdogs. But yeah, if you get a good pitcher, you can have a Double-A quality game, every couple times a week.
Well, that'll do it for us here on a Friday. Bill, sorry to cut you off. We are up against a break here. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Schmitty will be back for the Saturday morning edition, 7 to 9, available shortly after. Back from suspension. We're just suspending him on Fridays from here on out this summer. So we'll talk to you again in the morning, 7 to 9. That's when we'll talk to you again. Have a lovely evening, and Saltdogs baseball coming up next year locally on ESPN Lincoln.
A Hurrdat Media Production.